I'm Madi Zuniga, and this is the future of the Alien series with Disney in the Driver's Seat podcast. I'll be talking about the past of the Alien series and its present/future after the merger with Disney, featuring a friend of mine, Filipe Costa. Okay, so we're going to talk about the future of the Alien series when it comes to Disney since their merger with
Mm-hmm.
20th Century Fox. And I guess we could start off with I have a few points with how 20 and before they merged with Disney.
Okay.
So first it was obviously Alien in 1979, then it was Aliens in 1986, Alien 3, or as I like to call it, Alien Cube from 92. Then it was Resurrection 97, Prometheus 12, and Covenant 2000 in 2017. And I just like to ignore Alien vs Predator and the Requiem one just because those are to me. Okay, and to those like the first two movies, those are like they're pretty good.
Yeah, I agree.
But when it came to Alien 3 or Alien Cubed, is when I think just mainly.
Yeah,
Oh, you're gonna say something?
yeah. I was just gonna say just to remember, Alien 3 was the one where Ripley was reborn, right?
Alien 3 was when she woke up in hypersleep again, but from the events right after Aliens,
Okay.
and it's with the famous runner alien. You
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. But when it came, the reason why that went downhill was the major studio interference.
Yeah, which is always just a problem.
Yeah. The 20th Century Fox did not know what to do. They had a lot of success from Alien and Aliens, and they're like, okay, well, we're gonna get all this money. What are we gonna do now? And at this point, all they're caring about is the money, not really where the story is going through. And from what I've like learned is that they went through like almost I think 5 scripts just to even get the idea put together. They went from ideas like just the character from Aliens, Corporal Hicks, and just Bishop, and they weren't even going to put Ripley in the movie. That was one of them, which they had a good idea, and I feel like that one was a good one. It was going to basically take place in this giant industrial area where they were with other Marines, and they were going to fight a bunch of aliens. And that actually sounded pretty cool. Yeah, they went through a lot of scripts, just didn't know what to do. And their final result was Alien 3, which a lot of people were disappointed with, mainly because it killed off the two best characters from Aliens, Corporal Hicks, and it killed off Newt.
Yeah.
A lot of people did not like that. At first, I was very bitter about it. I didn't like that either. When I first watched Alien 3, I was very upset because I watched the movies back to back. And I'm like, I just had this relationship with Corporal Hicks and with Newt, and they just killed the first 10 minutes.
Yeah. Like I'll say this. I know I've only really seen the first Alien movie. I've been trying to see at least the first three. Maybe Resurrection if I really hate myself enough. But the thing with movies like that is, you get to a certain degree where the movies start working well, and then for the most part, because I don't want to generalize, because there are some movies that you get 3 good movies throughout. For the most part, you kind of get to a situation where the third movie, whether they're running out of ideas or whether they're trying too hard to be different, you end up losing the plot a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
Because obviously Alien 1 was, a pretty good horror movie. And then Alien stepped it up and, did a little bit more expanding the universe. I think with Alien 3, they probably were feeling pressured to take it to a different level in comparison to Alien and Aliens. So I feel like you get they were gonna be in a bad spot no matter what, you know. Um,
Yeah.
I feel like ultimately the problem ended up being they felt forced not just by the pedigree that Alien built, but they felt forced by what they saw that they needed to do in order to, keep the movie going. They didn't think they could, keep the foot off the gas. They thought we need to keep reinventing, we need to keep making it better and better. And I think ultimately that kind of blew it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And Alien 3 did have a lot of pressure, especially when the director, David Fincher, it was his first film. Before that, he was just doing music videos. And he had like a lot of pressure because, living up to Aliens and Alien. Like, it was just like a really big deal. And when it came to, I think he was helping with the script. They said they liked his idea, and I did like the idea that they changed it up a bit and used the runner xenomorph, because that shows that, like, when you get a face hugger to the face, it comes out as this standing up creature. But when it goes to an animal that's on all fours, it was an interesting idea that they made it run on all fours, and I actually like that part of the movie, that they decided to make it a little different.
Yeah, it's interesting because after Alien 3, he worked on a movie called Seven, called The Game, which I don't know if those two movies did very, very well. He ended up being the director of movies like Fight Club and I think Zodiac, which a lot of people liked, as well as things like The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Social Network, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Gone Girl. Obviously, he had a lot of success afterwards, but I think the problem ended up being where he needed to learn how to direct, and they put him in a situation where he was just kind of thrown to the directing position. And he obviously had some good ideas, but I think ultimately, you if you're gonna handle a movie like that, you're gonna wanna have someone who's ready to go. You're gonna
Yeah.
wanna have someone who has some previous directorial experience, if that's a word.
Yeah. And I actually watched this YouTube video from a YouTuber named Chris Stuckman. He was talking about with his friend about Alien 3 and like the ups and downs of it. They said that when it came to Fox, they just like threw all the problems to David Finch and Fincher, and they were saying that, especially for a new director, they just dumped all the problems on him. So when people saw how bad this movie was, they didn't really blame the 20th Century Fox. They just blamed him because they considered him as just a bad director. But I think
Yeah,
that like had to suck.
it does, because you're put in a position to make a movie. You're already handling, which at that point was a movie series that has a lot of, you know it carries a lot of weight. Alien was Alien at that point. It wasn't the first movie or even the second movie, um but it was the third now. And as much as Ridley Scott did a great job with the first movie, did he work on Aliens? Was that Ridley Scott as well?
That
No, it
was
was
James Cameron.
James Cameron. I didn't know that. That's weird.
Yeah.
um I mean, he did a pretty good job with that movie, but you could tell, um from Alien to Aliens, um the tone of the movie changed in terms of, uh, going from a movie that's very much horror connected to a more action oriented movie with Aliens, which is not a bad thing. Aliens still did well as a movie. Just the thing with that is, people were, when you look at Alien as a movie, Alien, the tagline kind of says it all. In space, no one can hear you scream. It's a horror movie. How long into the movie does it take until you actually first see the alien? Close to an hour, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Because you see the face hugger, you see the chest burster, and then the rest is just, you're on the edge of your seat until you finally see the actual alien itself. So already with James Cameron, you have the movie taking a different tone and a different turn, and then just throwing it off to a brand new director who hasn't even done a movie before outside of music videos. Um, it was gonna end well. It's the same thing with what movie was it? Suicide Squad. Originally Suicide Squad, I forget who the director was, but then they gave it over to a company who did trailers for a living and directed trailers and not movies, and that kind of like, at least in my opinion, was one of the downfalls of Suicide Squad.
Well, as much as I like to keep complaining about Alien 3, um, going on to like Alien Resurrection, that movie was, I don't even know how to explain that movie. That's like when they definitely hit rock bottom.
That one had a
Because
good cast too. That's the thing.
yeah, they had a lot of good actors in there, and they had like they had a good concept with the movie. Just the way they did it was not great. Like
Like,
you have Sigourney Weaver, they even had like Ron Perlman. They had I forget her name.
but you have all these different actors put together, and it happens with a lot of movies. Winona Ryder.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
you have all these different actors that have a bigger name to them. And you know that obviously, um, Ron Perlman is big in action movies. He played Daredevil. Obviously it doesn't always work, but I think with that movie specifically, you also had Joss Whedon, one of his first projects. Like you look at his the movies that he did up until Resurrection, all he had done was the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie, which he didn't even direct. Alien Resurrection doesn't even list him as a director; it lists him only as a writer.
yeah,
Um, it was directed by Jean-Pierre Junot.
yeah. That was the big problem between them is that they both had different ideas when it came to the movie. Joss Whedon was the one who wanted to give the hope to the movie, but then John Pierre he wanted to give more of the alien, like the original alien vibes, like the isolation and all that, by putting them on this big ship that was actually kind of spaced out, but you still felt like somewhat isolation. But Joss Whedon put so much hope into it that there's just two different ideas colliding, and that's one reason why that movie did so bad.
Yeah, and for people who might not know, Junot, probably his biggest movie is Amélie, which is a more, I wouldn't say avant-garde, but a very different French film, and he's not a traditional director in the sense of the way people normally do movies. So no matter who was writing with him, they were going to clash. But Joss Whedon has very specific ideas on how to handle things. I mean, you've seen people have read the way he was going to handle Wonder Woman. There are complaints about the way he handled stuff like Avengers and other Marvel properties. So you have to imagine um, what could have been if you were to give more control to the director and a writing staff that worked well with the director for Alien Resurrection. Because you're right, there is that isolation, and the ending to that movie was really weird. Um, I get what they were trying to do, but it just ended up being odd, and there was tone shifts throughout that you can see. The writing team, and the directing team were pulling back and forth on each other to see um, who got to do what. You know,
Yeah. And well, yeah, after Resurrection, then they stopped for a few years, and then they went right into Alien versus Predator. After doing the Predator movies, they're like, well, we want to put these two um versus together, because people were like looking at like Freddy versus Jason and all that stuff. So they saw the comic book series for Alien versus Predator. They're like, okay, well, we should make a movie about this, because we haven't seen Alien since '97. We should like do something. You
yeah.
know, Mr. Fox, wants that money. And Alien vs. Predator, I have a love hate relationship with that movie, because I actually like the movie a little bit, but there were some parts I felt like they could have changed or fixed on that movie. I actually forgot who directed that one.
I know. For
Um,
the second one, it was a weird movie in terms of the concept. But let's, before we move on to that, see who did the first AVP.
it was Todd Anderson.
His name sounds familiar.
Um,
I think in terms of movies stuff he's done, he did the first Mortal Kombat movie. Oof, that's rough.
yeah,
He did the movie Event Horizon, which had some issues with it because of um just the way it tried to have two different stories going on. There was the movie he did the first Resident Evil movie, which wasn't very good. He did the third Resident Evil movie. He did Death Race. He did a few. Resident Evil movies. He did the Three Musketeers movie. And he's working on the current Monster Hunter movie with Mila Jovovich. So, I mean, movie turned out what it was. It was more just like a fantasy. It was more just to give fan service to fans. And then they tried doing it again with Alien vs Predator 2, where it was like it was a small town. The aliens were dropped there. I think was that the movie with the Pred alien? Because I remember, that one was the one with the Predator alien. Where
they had the Pred alien that one, and it was just not good in my opinion.
The first Alien versus Predator, who had the Predator that sacrificed to save one of the humans, and then it ended up getting a face hugger that managed to implant itself. Then it created a Predator alien hybrid, and then you got that showed up and that was able to, for some reason, lay its own eggs inside people, like it was part face hugger. It was weird. It went from doing like this weird thing where there was this party and this pizza delivery guy in the very beginning, but then like it got involved with the military and this pregnant lady getting a bunch of chest bursters put into her.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on in that movie, and I think that one, I don't even know, I bet you the person who directed that one wasn't even a relevant director.
Greg Strauss and Colin Strauss. I'm assuming they're probably like a brother duo.
Yeah.
I don't know their work that well or at all.
The original Alien vs Predator, if we look at there were like some comics, and then Requiem was that one, and by the brothers Strauss, Colin and Greg Strauss, and the stuff they're mostly known for is they did that movie, and then they did Skyline, Take Shelter, The Bay. They didn't even direct these. Predator, Requiem, and Skyline are their only movies they ever directed. I don't even know what movie Skyline is.
I one time saw the opening to Skyline when I was washing dishes, and I saw like the first 10 minutes, and I'm like, what is this movie? Why does it look awful? Like, I don't know. I just knew nothing about that movie, and I just saw the first 10 minutes. I'm like, I really want to change the channel now.
So obviously that didn't come out right. And then you have, I think the next movie we got was only Prometheus, which...
It was Prometheus and then Alien Covenant after.
Prometheus was supposed to be one where Prometheus was meant to be like the inception of aliens and how they came to be, where one of the characters ends up getting like a proto face hugger or whatever it was, ends up putting inside herself, and then it ends up getting, she removes it before it bursts out of her chest, and there's a whole subplot with one of the androids that's involved, and then you get it grows into Alien Covenant, where there's a colony ship. It lands on a planet where I think the same planet where the precursors were on, and the same planet that the android was stuck on beforehand. And the precursors were the reason why the alien became a thing, where the alien got inside the precursor, and then we get the traditional alien that we got at the end of it. So,
well, kind of.
Sort of. It was like the slowly...
the protomorph.
And then that
almost there.
Covenant was definitely better than other movies. Specifically 3 and Resurrection. And Prometheus was an interesting take.
I do see a lot of hate around it for Prometheus and Alien Covenant. A lot of people did not like the prequels. In my opinion, I actually liked the prequels. I like that it was a different take on it, especially since Ridley Scott came back for those films. And I actually liked the way Prometheus was, because nobody knew it was an alien movie. They just thought, okay, it's another space movie with, space monsters or aliens. And then no one knew what was connected until they saw the Deacon creature at the end of the movie, which I think was before the credits rolled.
Yeah, right before the credits rolled.
Yeah, and people are just like, okay, well, now it's an alien movie, but nobody liked it because it was they didn't show the connection between that and Alien. And then
people just have a bad relationship with prequels right now, because there's just been the amount of prequels we've had that have just not worked out the way people want them to, and just kind of been pretty miserable. I mean, biggest example are the the Star Wars prequels, of course. And I think we'll probably later come back to the topic of Star Wars when when in relation to Alien, because it experienced what Alien is going to experience now. But you have this idea that prequels a lot of times don't do well. Prequels don't handle the source material well. They try changing too much. They try too hard when you already have a story set out. I don't think
Yeah.
Prometheus did that, and I don't think Alien Covenant did that. I guess people probably didn't want an explanation for how the aliens became a thing. Um, I guess people didn't like the fact that aliens were basically created by an android, as opposed to just being a native species that existed already. Which I understand that. I understand they want, the mystique of the alien. They don't want everything explained, but I don't think it was that bad
Yeah,
of an
like
explanation.
I liked it because it was the way that it was different. That Ridley Scott didn't really want to focus that much on the xenomorphs, which a lot of people didn't like. Which is why Alien Covenant actually had the xenomorphs in it, well, the protomorph, and people didn't like the idea that he wanted this to be. He wanted the prequel. It was going to be a trilogy, and he wanted it to be mainly about the androids being the new threat, and how David 8 was the android that was wanted to get rid of mankind and have his own perfect organism.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just didn't like that idea. I thought that was a really good idea, the way he would change it up a bit. Because he, in his own words, he said that the reason why AVP did so bad was because they kept using the same thing over and over again, like chest burster, face hugger, chest burster, monster, death, like in that order, and they kept reusing that over and over again. People are gonna end up getting tired of that. Well, according to the fans, they didn't, but he said at some point people would get tired of that, and he said just to change up the story. And when you said about the people not liking prequels and like how they need the explanation, that reminded me of a line in Prometheus where David is saying, well, it was no, sorry, it was Alien Covenant. He says that how disappointing would it be when you have a master that tells you that you are made because humanity decided just to make you. He said, how would you feel if you found your creators and they told you we just made you by accident? Which, according to their story, they did make them by accident. The engineers, they made them by accident, and they didn't want them anymore. And I kind of
Mm.
like that idea. Like, I feel like that was like Ridley Scott trying to tell people about prequels. Like,
Yeah,
how would you
that's
feel about that?
interesting. To me, that it didn't even register that. I don't know. It's interesting. I understand people being upset, but I feel like especially with the person handling the source material, handle it a lot better than other people. And um you had George Lucas, how he handled the prequel trilogy in Star Wars, and they ended up pretty bad. That across the board, people didn't like them. Um, I think Ridley Scott did a pretty good job for the most part, but I don't know. I don't really get the dislike for those movies to the point where people say they're not good. They're good movies. But I think if Prometheus, when people enjoyed it, when they went into it not thinking of it as an alien movie, but because of the fact that now it's an alien movie and people connect it to Alien Covenant, when they look at it, it changes the way they see the movie, and they're always expecting the alien to come in. And since the alien never comes in, it's hard for them to enjoy the movie the way that they would have enjoyed beforehand. So I understand that, but I think, and then to really make things more interesting, like the next installment of the Alien franchise that was really good ended up being a game, in Alien Isolation, which happens after the first Alien, right?
It actually takes, yeah, right after Alien. Yeah,
So
I was
you
about to
you
confuse it with Aliens.
yeah, you play as Ripley's daughter, trying to figure out what happened to Ripley. You go to the Sevastopol station, you find the black box, and then you just basically have to go through. You go through the Weyland Yutani takeover of Sevastopol and basically using it as a breeding ground for aliens, and you destroy it at the end. And at the very end of it, you get picked up by Ripley herself, right? I think that's how it ends.
Yeah, she gets like picked up by another like spaceship, which actually connects to their next game, which was the mobile game, which they consider that one also part of the series. where she's basically, I forgot what the spaceship name was, but she was in there in the ducks, and a Whaley Yutani crew came in, and they're trying to figure out what happened there because they heard a distress call. They throwing it back to Alien. They heard distress call. They decided to help, and Amanda Ripley the whole time was just trying to get them out all alive. But what was the point of the game? And then from there, it ends with them going to another ship, and then where it's going to take them from there. Actually, I think it either ends that way or it ends with them almost leaving. I forgot because I got bored halfway looking through the gameplay because I did not want to buy the game. It was like $5.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was like a little interesting that they would try to continue her story that way.
And it was a genuinely good game. I think that game really tapped into the essence of what the Alien series was all about to begin with.
Yeah.
It's scary. You don't really have much you can do against the alien except scare it or run away from it. It learned your habits as you played.
Yeah.
So obviously there's that level of interactivity with it. And then what's it called? The interesting addition of the working Joes, which are like a step below the actual androids, were cool to have that in the game, and a little bit more of like, you have this company Sevastopol, who was for the longest time a competitor to Weyland Yutani that eventually, just didn't work out, and they ended up being basically bought out by Weyland Yutani. So I thought Alien Isolation did a very good job of keeping to the essence of the series, and then I think from here we can go on to probably the biggest thing we can talk about, and that's how 21st Century Fox owns the Alien property, and within the last few, I think, a year or so ago, they were bought out by Disney.
Yeah.
So, and I think to come to really talk about, kind of wrap up the conversation, really wonder about what happens to the future of the Alien series under Disney, because Disney doesn't exactly have a stellar track record.
When it came to under Disney's wing, when they started to continue their part of the Alien series, they released the Alien role playing game tabletop game. They released that. That was a big thing for Alien celebrating its 40th anniversary. Hey, Future Madi here. During the original recording of the podcast, the recording app we used crashed on me, and I'm here to fill in the blanks. To pick up where I left off, Disney / 20th Century Fox decided to do some big things for its 40th anniversary of the original release of Alien back in 1979, and this happened in 2019. So what they decided to do was to do a short film contest and to release a role-playing game. Let's start with the role-playing game. They released the Alien tabletop role-playing game. It was basically Dungeons and Dragons, but replaced with flamethrowers and, well, being awesome as Ripley, and versus the xenomorph that was on the Nostromo in the original film. So basically what you have to do is try to get out alive in the many different scenarios it has. Now, moving on to the short film contest, they decided, you know what? It's been 40 years. We haven't had a lot of great films. We haven't been doing that good either since our last release, Alien Covenant. So let's do something fun. So they decided to pick 6 lucky winners for the contest to make this part of the canon of the aliens. They're Aliens, Alien 3 or Alien Cubed, and Alien Resurrection. So what they did is that those were going to be canon to that series. So the ones they chose is Containment, Specimen, Night Shift, or Harvest and Alone. Those 6 films, they won the contest, and they were pretty interesting. Each one had their own version of what would happen. I think one of my favorite ones would have to be Ore. And I thought it was pretty interesting for them to do something like that for the 40th anniversary. They haven't done so well. They decided, you know what, do a contest, release a tabletop game, and that's what would get people back into the groove of it. Now back to the podcast where Filipe will be talking about Disney making a profit by releasing sequels of one of its most popular films.
I don't know. It's the other interesting thing is the fact that Disney does a good job handling their own properties a lot of time. Like you look at what they do to even just Disney movies. I think Disney movies themselves, Pixar movies, um, they struggle to keep them, I guess, relevant sometimes. That they just keep pumping out sequels. I mean, we've had 4 Toy Stories now. Toy Story 2 was supposed to be the last one for a while, and they made Toy Story 3, and that was seen as the last one. They did Toy Story 4. We have so many different attempts at keeping franchises alive. Like Frozen's lifespan was extended for God knows how long just for product placement. And then on top of that, you get Frozen 2, a movie which I don't know, like to me at least it was an unnecessary movie and just kind of a way for Disney to make money. And that's been Disney's really operating power right now, where they'll take properties and really just, whether they're their own or some other companies, um, they'll do things specifically just to get money out of them.
Yeah, they're just basically making money off of anything involving the Alien name, especially when they knew that the 40th anniversary was coming up. So they're like, okay, we need to put ideas, like what I was saying about the short films. That when they put out those short films, like, okay, put out a contest. You know, people will want to be a part of that. Is going to get the Alien name, out there again. And
Yeah.
yeah, those short films were pretty good. Like I said before, with the tabletop game, and then that's pretty much where they stopped with the Alien series, which this was in last year in 2019. CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, he talked about a little bit more of Alien. I think after of those short films, he said that the movies would be rated R still. That they won't be changing that once they start getting back into Alien, the Alien movie series. But they said like it would probably be a few years until we actually see a new film for the series, especially since they said the box office failure of Alien Covenant.
I think the interesting thing with them is the fact that, like I mentioned Star Wars before, um and I think Star Wars is probably the biggest warning story for what could happen to aliens. Star Wars very much just kind of sits there and was made. Um, Star Wars was made, at least the last 3 Star Wars movies, outside of Han Solo, the Solo movie, and Rogue One, which Rogue One was a fantastic movie. Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker were all just kind of to capitulate off the money that you can make with Star Wars itself.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone loves Star Wars. Star Wars literally prints money. Um, they paid billions of dollars for Star Wars, so they're going to be using as much as they can. And like shows like Clone Wars and Rebels and different games made them enough money, but the movies were the big thing that people loved the most. And they really just messed it up with the movies, because no matter which of the new trilogy you look at, a large group of people didn't like it. And the way they bounced around directors, with starting with J.J. Abrams for episode 7, and then going to but they had a different director for episode 8. In episode 9 they brought back Abrams. um Ryan Johnson was episode 8. Like they basically pitted the directors against each other, and directors went going back and forth, changing things they did, and then the blame never went onto Disney itself for its mismanagement of talent and workers. Instead, the blame went to, like, oh, these directors didn't do the right thing. These directors didn't handle the movie the correct way. They should be the ones getting yelled at. The actors should be the ones in trouble because, they didn't act the way they should have. When you trace everything back, if Disney had kept one director for all 3 of those movies, I'm not going to say those movies would have been perfect, but I think we would have gotten a better overall product that made more sense, instead of getting Force Awakens being a bit like episode 4 again, New Hope, and then getting episode 8, the Last Jedi, basically trying to undo everything Star Wars is to try to start new, and then going to episode 9, where J.J. Abrams felt personally attacked and basically changed everything back to normal.
Yeah.
Disney, I can see Disney doing that to Alien. I could see Disney, first of all, trying to rewrite the canon of Alien and going back and either doing a reboot or doing sequels that, rewrite stuff and say like, oh, well, this wasn't this was that. And I can see
Yeah.
them just putting out 2 hours of nothing just to make money off Alien. Like that's kind of how Disney operates, and the fact that they own that, and then you've seen as much as people enjoy the Marvel movies over the years, they're starting to show off their flaws and their cracks and everything. So I want to hold out hope that Disney kind of like has been looking at what it's doing, and kind of figuring out like, hey, maybe we should probably put a little more effort into the movies we're doing. But it looks like they're just kind of holding the same spot with everything, because you have now Bob Iger stepped down, and a executive from Facebook is leading Disney. Um, I don't know. I don't. It's kind of hard to be optimistic about what Disney's going to do with not just Alien but other 21st Century Fox products, now that after we've seen what they've done with stuff like Marvel, Star Wars, and even Disney's own products.
Yeah. Like I feel like there could be a lot of hope, especially like what they've been doing with Marvel because it's so successful, and a lot of people are pretty pleased with with Marvel and all their movies. But then when it comes to Disney and their horror movies, it's not that good because then from what I could research, they only released two horror movies, which was under 21st Century Fox's name, like obviously under Disney. It was The Predator from 2018, which didn't do well, and Underwater from this year in January.
That Kristen Stewart movie, right?
Yeah, a lot of people said they felt like that movie was really good. But on Disney's part, what they did wrong was that they released that movie in the worst horror movie month of January, because that's where all horror movies go to die. Any movie released in January, it's gonna end up pretty bad.
My
And
problem. No, go ahead, finish. I'm sorry.
that a lot of people they said, well, there's one YouTuber I watched, Chris Stuckman. He said that the thing about Underwater was that it was a good horror movie, and they were wondering why release the movie. And this movie was actually made in 2017, which was an interesting something I thought that was interesting, that they made the whole thing in 2017. It was done in 2017, but they
And
didn't
they
release
released
it.
it in 2020.
Yeah, they delayed it because I don't know, Disney and the horror movies, they're just not good with it.
The one thing I'll say about, because you mentioned how successful Marvel movies are, I don't necessarily equate success a lot of times with how good a movie is, because there have been some Marvel movies that haven't been great. Age of Ultron was not great. Thor: The Dark World wasn't great. Uh, I think Thor, the third Thor movie, what's it called?
Ragnarok.
Ragnarok was great because Taika Waititi came in with a completely fresh perspective and something different. The first Thor movie was basically very paint by numbers type stuff, and the
Yeah.
second Thor movie just the first Captain America was solid. The first Iron Man was solid. I think Iron Man 2 was probably the better of the Iron Man, and then Iron Man 3 kind of got away from itself. Captain Marvel was great, but because of the directing team, there was a little bit too much of Air Force and military propaganda in it, but that's a whole other thing. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had its moments as a TV series. The Marvel TV shows were probably some of the best stuff they put out because it was handled by Netflix, and then those shows were canned. Where you had, aside from Iron Fist, which didn't do well, you had Luke Cage, which was fantastic. You had Jessica Jones, which was fantastic. You had Daredevil, which was fantastic. Punisher was great, and then you had the Defenders, which was everyone but Punisher together. You know, the Endgame movie and um the last two parts of the Avengers trilogy were all right. Guardians of the Galaxy, the two movies, again, they stuck out because James Gunn had a unique spin on everything. Whenever you see a movie where Disney is allowed to do whatever they want and sticking their hands in it, it feels like it it makes it worse. Like I I didn't like Civil War that much. I
I
really
didn't
liked
either.
I really liked Winter Soldier. I think Winter Soldier was probably the best Captain America movie. Civil War felt like Disney was just really didn't have a grasp of the material, and they just kind of wanted, oh no, Iron Man and Captain America are mad at each other type situation, when ultimately in the comics that's not the story. The story in the comics is the fact that um, they both have good reasons for supporting the sides that they do. They just kind of make Iron Man to be a jerk in it,
Yeah.
and Captain America to be like a moral hoity-toity. When in the comics, you have Tony Stark genuinely thinks that they should be held accountable and there should be an independent system of, you know, watching everything. And Captain America thinks like, oh, this is just going to be a way to control us. And then they end up finding out that's what they wanted to do, and they, reconciliate and work together against it. You had, what was it? Black Panther was such a good movie because again, it was independently done.
Yeah.
Like, and I think with Alien, they might, whatever movie comes out first with Alien through Disney might have a lot of freedom, but from then on, Disney's going to put their hands in it. And when you have too many hands in the pot, too many cooks in the kitchen, that's when you start getting problems. And Disney's going to, at the end of the day, Disney's going to be about the money. If it's
Yeah.
not going to be able to bring in the money it can, they're either going to can it completely, or they're going to change it to be the most acceptable to the audience. Like, it can't rock the boat. It has to be you have to pander to everyone in the audience, and then at the same time you're going to make everyone else mad that you're not pandering to. Like, Tron was the Tron Evolution was a movie that I enjoyed. I wouldn't say it was a critical success or even a financial success, but I liked it, and that's why the third Tron movie ended up getting canned, because Daft Punk was already even working on the soundtrack for that new Tron movie, and then Disney's like, oh well, it wasn't profitable enough, and we're going to lose money, so we're going to let it go, when they really just didn't give it a chance to succeed to begin with. And I think Alien, there's a good chance that Alien might end up in that same place where they're just going to try to milk it for money, and when it doesn't, instead of realizing, oh, it's our fault because we're not promoting it, we're not letting it be what it wants to be, they'll think, well, it's the directors, or it's the casting, or the marketing wasn't good enough, or the property isn't good enough and people aren't interested anymore, and they'll just get rid of it.
Yeah. And I know when I was doing my research on this, that when it came to Ridley Scott and Disney last year, Ridley Scott was saying that there's talks that he was gonna try to finish up the prequel saga, and then they even had talks of him doing an Alien series on Hulu. I mean, that I feel
Mm-hmm.
like could be interesting. Maybe they, to get away from the Ripley storyline, to get away from the David storyline, and to start something different with involving the aliens. And I feel like that's like one thing that Disney was doing okay with, was when it came to, like, back to the short film thing. They did the story not involving those characters that were in the movies. They did all these different characters, all these different mini stories. Which, if they were to do that, like, with the Hulu series, I feel like that would be a pretty interesting idea. Maybe that, like, obviously it's going to bring them all the money, especially if it's on a streaming service, but not on their
It,
own.
it's definitely could be an idea to try. I think the problem would be, um, making sure when those series do come out, that they can stand on their own, episode after episode. Because if you were to sit down and try to take those movies together, take not take the movies, but take Alien together and try to make it separate series, you'd have to really make sure that they can stand on their own. Because if they can't stand on their own, you're kind of in a bad place where those movies aren't going to come out well, and then people are just going to be like, well, why did you even bother doing this if these movies are just going to suck, you know?
Yeah.
Unless they can really nail the movies and really make sure, like, okay, we're going to do these films and we're going to have them come out to be the best that they can be. Not films, I keep saying films because I'm so focused on it being a movie series, but if they can sit down and say, like, we're going to have these TV shows, and we're going to put as much time into it. And I think they I don't think they could do an episodic series. I think they would need to do, each story is different episode by episode.
Yeah.
If they were able to do that, I think that would work a lot better, because you're trying to string what is in essence a movie series that you can maybe finish in 3 episodes. You're trying to keep people watching. You maybe want to do things like, um, different points of view
Yeah.
throughout the movie, different viewpoints in, like, this is what this character is going through. This is what it's like being, a soldier in the colonial army. This is one of the colonial marines. Or you can do something like, this is what it's like being an engineer for Wayland Yutani. Do some more stories of people who, you know live the same kind of transportation transportation thing that Ridley and everyone else did, Ripley and everyone else did, but instead of having them get attacked, you can just kind of see what life is like, you know, kind of
Yeah.
really make people understand what the alien universe is like outside of, the aliens, and then you can get more of a thought how this kind of stuff goes down later on, and then start including episodes where these people maybe get affected by the aliens. And if you really want to sew it all together, you can even do something where um at the end of the series the plot lines start to connect, and you see that this Weyland Yutani worker ends up crossing paths with these different merchants, and these Marines end up helping out or finding these poor victims who were, you saw them in episode 2. So I feel like there's potential there, and I feel like if they were to do a TV series, it would very much need to be separate from the movie and kind of be its own thing until you put everything back together and stitch it all up into something interesting.
An anthology, like that would work. And what you were saying earlier about when it came to Marvel and like their better movies, the newer ones, they were better because of different directors. If they were to do this Alien series, and as much as Ridley Scott really did put a lot of effort into the Alien series, if they did it without him, I think it would be better. Like, like you said, like someone with fresh new ideas, someone different. Because they want to keep bringing back all these directors from the other movies, and like if they want to bring back Ridley, they want to bring back James Cameron. But it would be better if they had this with a fresh set of eyes, like someone who can get the series and make it better instead of just going back to the old ways, which
Yeah,
I think would improve it.
yeah, I think a TV series. I think the best thing you can look at for a TV series from Alien would be what they're doing with Star Wars TV series. Like The Mandalorian was wildly successful. Everyone loves it, you know. And I think, and you see, The Mandalorian has, I think there were 3 or 4 different directors across the 8 episodes, and they were able to bring in some famous actors to do some scenes, and ultimately it worked so well. Like Taika Waititi directed a couple episodes, since we were mentioning him before. I think if they're able to handle that and able to give the same approach they gave The Mandalorian to not just the Alien series as a TV show, but just other TV series and other properties, I think Disney can do well. They need to lay off the movies for now because the movies it's just not working out with the movies. Like
Yeah.
it's too saturated, and Disney has been finding better success with short form like TV and stuff.
Yeah, because like if you really, really think about it, their last successful film with Alien was Aliens, and that was in 1986. That was like the really good movie that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, the thing I want to see the most when it comes to the alien, anything involving alien, is the different creatures that comes out with it. For example, there was a comic book series that showed, and also a action figure collection where it showed the xenomorph getting into different animals and getting into different aliens and how what the outcome would look like. One was like if they had like with the Prometheus, like how a xenomorph one would look like, or how a different type of ox would look like, or a rhino. Like if they did more ideas like that, I would watch all of them honestly, because that's what I personally want to see is all those different creatures, and like not just humans or the dog or the ox from Alien 3. Like I want to see more things being created with that, which is another great idea they could be using instead of just continuing the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately, but ultimately the problem with Disney is the fact that they don't have that pull anymore like they used to be able to just really expect people to take whatever they put out and not be mad about it. And I think um if they really try hard, they can pull something good out of this. Um but as of now, like I don't really see it coming out anything good except um you know just them trying to make money off it. If Disney really wants to be successful with Alien and with other properties going forward, either adopt short form where they take their movie properties and put them to TV series to kind of make people interested again, or really put effort into being willing to take a hit financially in order to get a better movie product. Because a lot of the reasons why these companies aren't willing to experiment is because they're expecting to lose money by not doing what people not putting out what people expect them to. So it kind of becomes a self-perpetuating prophecy where it's like, well, if we don't do what people think we're going to do, it's going to end badly. But if we put out what people expect us to put out, it'll do well. I think you can have some confidence and some hope that maybe, Ridley Scott or other directors can be involved in doing something good, and, you get a good cast together. And hey, maybe, just maybe, you could have someone big or a big name come in and handle the movie, and Sigourney Weaver can come back and play Ripley again. But I think right now it's really just it's gonna be a struggle, and I don't have the most confidence.
Like, I have this little name for Mickey Mouse. I call him Mickey Moneybags Mouse because he's just all about the money and how much you can stretch out all that stuff when it comes to these big names in film and TV series and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast, because this is something definitely interesting to talk about.